I wanted to sort of turn now to an area I know it's sort of a passion around yours, which is around purpose of organisations, and particularly sort of social purpose. And I think there's two areas to sort of finish with here. First of all, the investment that AO is now taking around sustainability. And then I'd like to sort of explore with you a bit about the sort of the AO Smile Foundation and the work that you're doing with young people. So turning to the sustainability one, again, you know, if we're looking at this from a purely commercial perspective, this is potentially adding cost into the AO business model compared to some other sort of competitors. So why have you felt the need to actually really invest significant sums in, I think you call it the cradle to cradle process with white goods in particular?
Yeah, so we have a deep belief that the best service is no service, and exceptional service is the most profitable service. And so this falls into the latter. So the exceptional service is the most profitable service. So does this put cost into our business? Well, yeah. So in the short term, yeah, a lot. But in the long term, I don't think it does. So we looked at the recycling market. So number one, it's what customers would want us to do, I believe, deeply. And as they learn more culturally what our business is about, from a brand perspective, we want customers to love our brand. Not like shopping with us, not shop with us because we're the cheapest. We'll be the cheapest, the fastest, the most convenient. They're all just hygiene factors. We want them to shop with us because they love us. And this is just another reason that they will love us, because we do the right thing and in this context, we're doing the right thing for the environment. But what we looked at in the recycling industry, if you like, in the electrical space, was just quite how dysfunctional it was. It was like the Wild West. Genuinely it was. And there's these things called we notes that get traded, and everybody's trying to shaft everybody. So most businesses don't vertically integrate in the way that we do. But it was just the next logical extension for vertical integration, that we own the retail end of it, we own the distribution end of it, so we should own the back end of it as well. And then because of the relationships that we've got with the brands, what it then enables us to do is take the plastics that come out of the plants and put them through. We then had to build a plastics plant. There was another few million quid. And then try and inject them back into the supply chain. But ultimately, if we can sell a product to a customer of a washing machine that's made out of washing machines for no premium to the customer, that creates the same margin for us and it's no premium for a customer, I think that's a point of differentiation. Therefore, I think that gives us a structural advantage, and that's a reason why a customer should shop with us rather than why a customer should shop with somebody else. So if you take a long-term view, which we do on the vast majority of things that we do, I think it gives us structural advantage. The problem is that the early journey in these things is a bit uncertain. But he who wanders is not necessarily lost, is something that we're quite comfortable with as a business. And it's not something that everybody else is always comfortable with. And it's something that, particularly the investment community struggles with on our business, as we found out in our expansion into Europe, which has all turned out brilliantly. And now everybody thinks it's really clever. There were some moments in there where we hadn't quite worked it out, but we were still committed to it. Recycling's been very much the same journey, really. And I'm dead proud that, if you, of the major decisions that we've made, I don't even know what the full investment that we've made is, but I don't know, 15 million, maybe 20 million quid we've invested into that. That's a fair sized bet. When you don't quite know what the model is and you're working it out as you go. And we've now got an enormous opportunity now to probably double that business, which is going to require probably double that investment again. So I'm dead proud that we've created that opportunity for ourselves and to be able to do the right thing for customers. And if you're having dinner with your mum, I did actually take my mum around our recycling plant. And she just burst with pride that we would think to do something like this. So I think that's pretty cool, and hopefully in the long term customers will think that's pretty cool. From a Smile, the second part of your question, the Smile Foundation, we take seriously that I think businesses have a responsibility to give back to the communities from which they take a lot from. And different businesses will decide to do that in different ways. The only thing that I think that's unacceptable is to do nothing. And every business can do something. And as your business becomes more successful, you should do more. And if every business thought in that way, I think the country would be a much better place. Because business is better placed to solve a lot of society's problems than government. In fact, government is shocking, as we can see, of solving the vast majority of societies. That's not what government's there for. There just isn't an ability level, frankly. The vast majority of them couldn't run a bath, let alone a business. And UK PLC is a business. And the heartbeat is our economic engine. And so if you can apply the best that comes from that to help solve some of society's social issues, then I just think we'd be in a much better place. And so I'm a campaigner for businesses and people doing their bit. And I believe every person in the country can do more than they do. And I believe every business in the country can do more than they do. And I think the pandemic has actually been, loads of heartwarming examples of, whether it's the local pub that can no longer serve meals, that's become a hub that's doing meal delivery because it's got a kitchen, and and people that are vulnerable or old and shielding or whatever it might be. And people have just taken it on themselves. There's been incredible stories. I always joke about people in London came out on a Thursday night to celebrate the NHS and found out they had neighbours. So I think we've got to take the best out of COVID in that context, and hopefully it'll be a great societal wake-up call.
That's brilliant, John. I think that really gives us, as I say, a different flavour and perspective on the business. So we can see how your DNA sort of runs through all of the sort of operations there. As I say, this is sort of live, and we do have a few sort of leaders who've popped in to sort of listen in on the conversation. I think, Liz, do you want to ask John?
Yeah, hi, John. I'm Liz Howarth from Halton Housing, based in Runcorn and Widnes. I was just reflecting on the parallels between your business and ours, in that a lot of the customer experience is based on usually men turning up in a van. And you talked about culture by osmosis, and I just wondered how that osmosis and the culture gets to the people driving the vans and who are working in people's homes, and how you drive that culture to ensure a positive customer experience.
So I think that, so I talked about communication being the oxygen of leadership. I think that communication is everything. You can't over communicate in that context. But then again, from a structure perspective, those people that are out on the road will have touch points with the organization. And so those touch points should reinforce the culture of the organization. And, if the culture was the answer is yes, what's the question? Then they know that when they get to a property. So when they're going there to do work, is the answer, how do we do this at least cost? And you might never say that as a value or a principle of how you want to work, but if that's what they feel all the time, Sally, my wife, often laughs at me. That's not what I said; it's what you heard, John. Is a lot of the what's lost in translation. So what comes from on high on purpose and values, if it's not truly lived through the organisation, it's worthless anyway. So actually, when we talk about osmosis, in that context, it's, do you live it? Do you really live it? Personally, I've been thoroughly underwhelmed by the housing association sector on how they claim to try and solve sort of social problems for their tenants and all the rest of it. And actually, my experience is they're landlords like everybody else, and when it actually comes to it, it's all pretty hollow. And I say that with quite passion, because we've been trying now for about 5 or 6 years to solve the affordability problem around electricals in the home, which is one of the most expensive things that your tenants will pay for, and affordability around those. One of the saddest things is that those who can afford things least in life normally pay the highest price. And we built a platform that, had it got real engagement across the social housing sector, we could have made a real transformational difference. And we've spent 5 years banging our heads against a brick wall, trying to drag housing associations to the party, such that literally in the last 12 months, not that we've given up, because giving up's the easy thing to do, but we're 5 years behind where we could be. And then I'll go and sit on these round tables and listen to all the social values, and we'll go and write down a priority list of problems of your tenants, and then try and work through those problems would be a pretty good way to go about it. So I think how an organization actually lives things then translates into those guys out on, guys and ladies out in those vans that are the face of the business on a day-to-day basis.
You probably weren't expecting that answer there, Liz. But I just wondered from John's perspective then. I mean, if you were starting this again, because I know your team's talked to lots and lots of housing providers. If you were starting this again, how would you sort of change your approach to tackling sort of white goods poverty then? Because as you say, it's a big pull on people's incomes.
So we still believe we can solve it, and I probably wouldn't have done a lot different, in truth. I said it before: he who wanders isn't necessarily lost. This has been a real iterative process of how you solve this problem, and lots of insights and learnings along the way. And the next biggest thing we need to do to solve it is to build a complex billing platform that enables those people to be able to pay in exactly the way, on exactly the moment that they want to pay for the right product. And that might sound a very simple thing to build, but it's actually quite a complex build. And from our perspective as a business, we just don't have the tech bandwidth to build that platform. We reckon it's a 6 to 9 month build investment, and probably, I don't know, I would guess a couple of million quid, something like that. And so we're philosophically committed to doing it, but it's basically got to get a prioritization within our tech roadmap. And I've always thought that the social housing sector is the most incredible route to market to reach these people. And one of the problems is this demographic, if you generalize it in language, is a very expensive demographic to reach in marketing terms. And it's a very expensive demographic to collect money from. And it's got loads of complexity around the collection of money. But there's a lot of fintech stuff that's coming along that really helps that. And so I think there's going to be, over the next 2 or 3 years, a real sort of meeting of they say the teacher arrives when the pupil is ready. Well, actually the pupil's been ready for a while, but the platform's got to be there as well. So I don't think we'd have done a lot differently. I find it very frustrating because with the help of government, who do a phenomenal amount of talking and legislating, and the FCA, and everybody celebrated killing Bright House. Woo, brilliant, yeah. Well, what was the other option that came along as a result of killing it? Oh, so did did you remove the need? Oh no. So, right. So where do those people actually go now? All you've done is drive those people into even worse forms of credit. And all the do-gooders sit around in the Treasury for all their meetings, there's lots of them without naming them, and celebrate how much success they've had on the legislation, but they haven't come up with a better option. So I find it hugely frustrating, but I think we're absolutely committed to it as a business. We'll get there in the end.
Absolutely, John. Perhaps time for one final question. If any of the audience sort of wants to ask John one final question before we wrap up. Karen, would you like to just introduce yourself?
I will. Hi, John. Thanks for that. Firstly, it was lots of things I learned there about AO I just didn't know. And I spent the first part of my life in the for-profit sector, automotive and in banking, and then moved into the social enterprise world, of which part of what I do is I sit on a board of Homes for Good in Glasgow. And immediately prior to this, I built a water brand, complete not-for-profit called Baloo. And what strikes me a lot about what you've said today is what's the purpose of business? Well, actually, it's great to say that we need to solve the world's problems. We can do them more than just make money. But unfortunately, unless everybody has that same mindset and has to do it, then it's just not going to happen. And as you've so clearly articulated, in a sector that many people who will watch this will love, the housing sector, we're trying to do our damnedest. But sometimes it's hard to make progress when it's outside of our area of expertise, and we're also limited with funds. So the point I wanted to go back to is how can we do this together? So, you talked about the partnership with, the test with Tesco's, which I assume a lot of the test is, are these a partner for us? How can it work? As well as, showrooms and sites generally. But how can you take what you've learned from partnerships and how you've learned through your journey about things that haven't gone smoothly to actually crack this, to say, how do we take a step forward with the housing sector to crack this problem together in a more partnership approach? How could we do that?
Well, so I think fundamentally that comes down to leadership. And, as I was saying to Liz, in terms of then actually living it and rather than talking about it. So it's interesting that you say you're in the not-for-profit sector. A lot of our investors would say that we're in the not-for-profit sector as well. But I think it's about having a commitment and a long-term vision for something rather than, I genuinely deeply believe, by the way, for what it's worth, that kind of charity begins at home, in the context of, if you've got a thriving, profitable, really efficient business with a great culture, you can do incredible things. You can do brilliant things much better than if you're just scraping by and you don't have that economic flywheel to be able to drive it all. And I think that from a leadership perspective, people need to be brave. That's probably how I would sum it up best. And there's no point for taking risks in the let's call it the not-for-profit sector. Or if you look at government and sort of, there's a gradient of somewhere in the middle of all that. But what's the prize for taking a risk? If it goes wrong, then you get shot down. Whereas in the commercial sector, there's loads of prize for taking risks. And so you tend to find, I think that, you get compounding compromises because people don't want to take risks. And the leadership isn't brave enough to say, come on, are we going to do this or are we going to do it? And I'm committed to this. And this is what I commit to. And this is what our organization, whether that's for profit or not for profit or government or whatever it is, this is what we are committing to. And this is how we are going to live it through our business. When we launched the rental scheme, I notionally told our business we're prepared to lose 5 million on this. That doesn't mean I want to lose 5 million quid. I'm the biggest shareholder in the business. Why would I want to lose 5 million quid? But the fact that we're willing to is kind of our table stakes, if you like, to go and have a go. And it sets the framework for, okay, well, that's our kind of wandering fund. By the time we've lost 5 million quid, we need to start having answers. And so when we're getting to about 3.5, we hold ourselves to account on, is this really going to happen? So we need a plan. And, you know, it's no more complex. When you're bringing organizations together, you're right on the Tesco thing. You know, the coming together of our two organizations has really been a great partnership. We get on great, you know, we have deep respect for them as an organization, and they do for what we bring to the party as well. And so bringing like-minded people together, I think is really important. Just bringing organizations together is a nigh on irrelevance. And one of the first things that I would ask for in that is, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? Because if everybody's trying to solve different problems in the same space, then it won't work. What's the broad plan and what's the rough cost? Even if it's what I would call Marlboro-like maths, you know, you can broadly work most things out on a pack of fags for what the macro maths of something are going to be. And then, right, let's jump in and get wet and get on with it. And let's be prepared to have a go. And then I always have champions in our business. You know, we have a phrase which is, if it isn't somebody's life, it'll fail. So somebody's got to live it. If it's a side of the desk project for 6 different people who have to come back to a committee once every 2 months, just forget it. You need somebody on point that's Spartacus, that I am going to make this happen. And so I think you've got to set it up for success. But ultimately, it comes back to leadership and a willingness to be brave and a willingness to step outside an organizational comfort zone. And the one thing housing associations can all do is afford it. Go and look at the balance sheet. You can afford it, I promise you. All it requires is a bit of financial creativity. And if the CFO isn't behind it in a housing association, in my experience, forget it. But if the CFO and the CEO are right behind it, then it's got a huge chance of success. And if they're not, the organisation isn't set up to take risks in that environment.
Well, John, on that call to arms, I think it's appropriate we end the DINCast there. So thank you so much for your time and your candour and your honesty in taking us through both AO's journey and also your experiences of working within the social housing space. So all the very best with the ventures, and I do hope that we can get some housing organisations that will take up the challenge from AO. So thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Ian. And just before we shoot, I don't want to end on anyone thinking, I still deeply, passionately believe that the housing association sector can do incredible things way beyond providing housing, and so I'll never miss an opportunity to poke the sector in the eye, if you will. But come on, we can all do a bit more, can't we? But I mean it very positively, I promise you.
No, I think, you know, being a stone in the shoe is sometimes quite a good thing to do, and I'm sure some of our members, our chief execs, would welcome you in to explore how they could do that. So thanks again, guys, and thanks again to you guys as well for tuning in, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. Until then, stay safe.